My family demanded rent right after dumping all their responsibilities on me. So, here's something I never thought I'd admit out loud. Last month, my own family tried to charge me rent for living in a house I practically ran by myself. And the best part? They announced it like they were reading off the dinner specials at Olive Garden. It was a Wednesday night in our little Arizona town. The air smelled like burnt chicken because Jenna, my brother's wife, forgot she was cooking again. I had just walked in from my double shift at a local hardware store, still wearing my dusty blue polo shirt, when my mom, Linda, cleared her throat in that dramatic way she does when she's about to ruin someone's evening. She set her fork down like she was placing evidence in a courtroom, folded her hands and said, "Harper, starting next month, if you want to keep staying here, you're gonna have to start paying rent." Just like that. No context, no discussion, no kindness, nothing. What made it worse wasn't the sentence itself. It was the reaction. Derek, my older brother, didn't even lift his eyes from his phone. His thumbs were tapping away like he was defusing a bomb. Jenna, leaning against the fridge with her ridiculous sparkly tumbler, let out this tiny laugh, the kind you give when someone falls but you pretend it's not funny. And my mom, she smirked. Linda always smirks when she thinks she's being wise, like she's the mother in some Hallmark movie delivering life lessons. But this wasn't a life lesson. This was a punch to the gut from the people who never missed a chance to remind me that I owed them everything. I didn't say anything at first. I just stood there holding a bag of groceries I bought with my own paycheck, the same groceries everyone in that house would inhale within 2 days. I remember thinking, is this some kind of joke? But no one laughed. They just looked at me like I was an employee who'd shown up late. I'm not the type to cry in front of anyone, especially not people who mistake kindness for weakness. So I swallowed the feeling, the way I'd been swallowing things for years, and forced my voice to stay steady. "I already pay for most of the bills," I said quietly. Derek actually scoffed. "Oh my God, Harper, you buy groceries sometimes, chill." "Sometimes?" I paid the electric bill for 2 years because it was always tight for them. I paid the internet bill because no one else could figure out autopay. I covered the gas card for Mom's car because she said, "Sweetie, you drive it more anyway," which was hilarious because I barely left the house except to work. But I didn't list any of that. I knew better. Facts don't matter to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. Linda raised an eyebrow like I'd offended her. "It's time you grow up, Harper. You're almost 30. I'm 26, but okay." I could feel something inside me shift, like a quiet click in a lock I didn't know existed. I just nodded slowly, pretending I wasn't breaking inside. If I had opened my mouth again, everything would have spilled out. The exhaustion, the resentment, the years of being the backup parent, the maid, the errand girl, the emotional trash can. So I grabbed my laundry basket from the hallway and walked to my tiny bedroom, the one I was apparently supposed to pay rent for now. I closed the door behind me and just stood there in the dark. You know that feeling when you suddenly realize you've been drowning for so long that breathing feels suspicious? It was like that. I didn't sit down. I didn't think. I just started packing. No folding, no sorting, no care. I threw clothes into my old duffel, shoved my toothbrush in a pocket, grabbed my chargers, my laptop, and this little keychain shaped like a cactus that my coworker gave me because she said it reminded her of me. Quiet, stubborn, apparently impossible to kill. I remember thinking, wow, so this is what leaving feels like. No one came to check on me. Not a single knock. Not even a fake, "Are you okay?" They didn't care. Or maybe they assumed I'd get over it like I always did. They'd always counted on my silence. But this time, silence meant something else. When I walked out carrying 2 bags and a pillow, they didn't stop me. They didn't ask where I was going. Derek didn't even pause his game. Linda didn't say my name. And that hurt more than the rent conversation. I stepped into the cool night air and felt something strange. Lightness. Not happiness. Not relief. Just the absence of weight. It was scary and comforting at the same time. I drove to a cheap roadside motel 15 minutes away, the kind with flickering neon and carpets that smell like old cigarettes. The woman at the front desk had a kind face, the tired kind that's seen a lot. When I gave her my ID, she glanced at my bags and said softly, "Rough night?" I nodded, and she slid me a bottle of water for free. That tiny act of kindness hit me harder than anything my family had done in years. Inside the room, with its peeling wallpaper and humming AC, I finally sat down on the edge of the bed. For a moment, I just stared at the wall. Then I laughed. Not because anything was funny, but because for the first time in my life, I realized something completely insane. My family had no idea who they were messing with. They thought I was weak because I was quiet. They thought I needed them because I stayed. They thought I had nowhere else to go. But what they didn't know, what they never bothered to notice, was that I had a part of my life they'd never touched. Something I kept hidden because protecting it meant protecting myself. A skill, a secret, a part of me they assumed didn't exist, and that secret was going to change everything. The first night at the motel, I barely slept. Not because I was scared, but because the silence felt too big, too empty. I'd been living in chaos for so long that peace didn't feel real. It felt like someone else's life, like I had accidentally stepped into the wrong movie. But by morning, something inside me clicked. I woke up with this strange calm, like my body finally realized, oh, we're safe now. I made myself stale motel coffee and sat on the floor with my back against the bed, just staring at my phone. All the messages were there. Missed calls, texts from Mom, from Derek, even from Jenna, who had never texted me directly in her life unless she needed something. The funny part? Not a single one of them asked if I was okay. Every message was a variation of, "Come back," "We need you," or "You're being dramatic." Derek even wrote, "The gas card isn't working. Fix it." Fix it. Like I was some kind of department they could file complaints with. I didn't reply. For the first time in years, silence was mine, and I wasn't giving it away. I spent that day applying for rentals, scrolling through online listings that looked way too expensive for my budget, but I didn't care. I just needed somewhere with a door that locked from the inside, somewhere no one could barge in demanding I fix their problems. After lunch, I drove around town looking at for rent signs, blasting old rock songs in my car like I was 16 again. And somewhere between Sweet Child O' Mine and a red light at Maple Street, it hit me. I wasn't sad. I wasn't even hurt anymore. I was angry, sure, but underneath that was something stronger. This slow, steady determination I hadn't felt in years. That's when I remembered the part of my life my family always ignored. The part they thought didn't matter because it didn't serve them. See, what my family never cared to understand is that outside of that house, I wasn't the maid or the free babysitter. I wasn't the one who should be grateful. I was someone who actually had talent. For the past few years, I'd been taking online classes in cybersecurity, working late nights, building small tools, fixing things for people around town. Nothing fancy, but enough that folks trusted me. Enough that I had built a small network of people who genuinely valued me, not for free labor, but for what I could do. One of those people was Miles, a guy I'd met in an online security forum during a group project. He was the kind of tech genius who wore hoodies year-round and said things like, "You should really enable two-factor authentication, Harper," as if it was a term of endearment. I messaged him later that afternoon, half joking, half not, and said, "Hey, I think my family's gonna implode now that I'm gone." He wrote back, "Finally, took them long enough." I laughed harder than I had in months. By the next morning, the real fallout began. Mom texted first. "The electric bill didn't go through. Did you forget something?" I stared at my phone, sipping motel coffee number 2. "Nope, Linda. I didn't forget. I just finally stopped being your walking, talking autopay machine." Then Jenna chimed in, complaining about the Wi-Fi. "It's down. Can you fix it?" The audacity was unbelievable. I almost replied, "Try unplugging Derek," but I held back. By the third day, I had booked a tiny studio apartment on the outskirts of town. It wasn't much, just one room with a kitchenette the size of a closet. But when the landlord handed me the keys, I swear I felt electricity go through my fingers. This was mine, my place. No yelling, no demands, no passive-aggressive comments about how I never contribute enough. The first thing I did when I walked in was open all the windows to let the air in. It smelled like old carpet and dust, but to me, it was freedom. Of course, the messages didn't stop. Derek escalated quickly. "We're drowning here," he wrote on day 4. "The kids need you. Grow up." Grow up? The man couldn't even pay his own phone bill on time, but I needed to grow up? Right. Jenna left a voice message crying about how hard things were without me. I could hear one of the twins screaming in the background. My stomach twisted, not out of guilt, but out of realization. They weren't missing me. They were missing the free labor. Day 5 was when everything clicked into place. I came home from signing some final paperwork, grabbed a grilled cheese I'd made. Yes, I actually got to eat something warm for once, and sat on the little rug I'd tossed on the floor. That's when Derek sent the funniest message I'd ever seen. "The grocery card you gave us isn't working. I thought you said the balance was fine." The balance was fine. Before I left. But guess who controlled the account? Me. Guess who closed it? Also me. I laughed so hard I nearly dropped my sandwich. It wasn't mean laughter. It was the kind you let out when the universe finally stops stepping on your neck and lets you stand up straight. I knew things were getting serious when I got home from work on day 6 and found a note stuck under my door. It was from my neighbor, an older man named Frank, who wore jeans older than me and always smelled faintly like barbecue. His note said, "Some guy came knocking asking for you. Tall, angry-looking. Didn't give him anything. Told him you moved to Alaska." I laughed, but there was a sting underneath. Derek had come looking for me. And if he was resorting to showing up in person, that meant the house was falling apart faster than I expected. That night, I called Miles again, not because I needed anything, but because it felt good to talk to someone who didn't treat me like a servant. I told him the whole story, from the rent conversation to the motel to the avalanche of bills crashing down on my family. He let out a low whistle and said, "Damn, Harper, you were their entire infrastructure." I sighed, because he was right. I had kept that house running, and they never even noticed. By day 7, the group chat was an absolute disaster. Mom blamed Derek. Derek blamed Jenna. Jenna blamed the house being cursed. I stayed silent. I watched the chaos from a distance, sipping tea in my new apartment, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Control. Real control. Not the kind they pretended to give me, the kind I took back. And here's the part that still shocks me today. I didn't miss them. Not even a little. What I missed was something much simpler. Myself. The version of me that used to believe I deserved better. The version that had been buried under chores, expectations, and emotional garbage. Now that I had space to breathe, she was coming back. Stronger, sharper, quieter. The kind of quiet that scares people. The kind of quiet that means a storm is forming. And if my family thought the storm ended when I left that house, they had no idea what was coming next. By the time day 10 rolled around, I honestly thought the chaos had reached its peak. I thought the missed bills, the screaming matches, and Derek driving around town looking for me were the climax. But no. My family has this incredible talent for digging deeper just when you think they've finally hit rock bottom. It was a Tuesday morning. I was at my new job. Yeah, I'd actually landed one, a legit junior analyst role at a small cybersecurity firm downtown. They had taken a chance on me after I aced a technical test, and for the first time in my adult life, somebody looked at me like I was capable of something. I was eating leftover pasta at my desk when my phone buzzed with a notification from Derek. It wasn't a text. It was a video. The thumbnail alone made my stomach tighten. Derek's shoes standing on the wood floor of my old bedroom. The caption said, "Look what we found." That was the moment I knew something was very, very wrong. I clicked play, and for a second I couldn't breathe. The video showed Derek kneeling on the floorboards I used to keep covered with a rug. My rug. He had pried them up, leaving splinters and dust everywhere, and he was pulling out a metal lockbox, my box. The one I had hidden back when I was 19. The one that held every document I didn't trust them with. IDs, old tax files, saved passwords, a thumb drive with scripts I'd written, a few journal pages I hoped never to read again. things that belonged to me alone. Derek was grinning like he'd uncovered buried treasure. "Family shares everything, right?" he said into the camera, shaking the box. He actually winked, like this was some kind of joke. My blood went cold. Not from fear, from anger so sharp it felt like static in my chest. They hadn't just crossed a line, they'd sprinted past it, lit it on fire, and then had the nerve to smile into the camera. I remember setting my fork down slowly, breathing in through my nose the way my therapist used to tell me, except I'd never actually gone to therapy because I was too busy paying everyone else's bills. I whispered to myself, "Okay, that's how you want to play." I didn't cry. I didn't panic. I didn't even reply. I just forwarded the video to Miles with one line. They opened the box. He called me in less than 2 minutes. "Harper, did they have access to anything digital?" His voice was calm, but not the comforting kind. The, "I'm about to help you ruin someone" kind. I told him everything. The passwords I'd changed, the things I'd moved, what might still be in the box. He sighed and said, "Okay, send me any old login info. I'll walk you through a wipe." 10 minutes later, we were in a video call, both of us focused like surgeons. Miles had me remotely wipe every device connected to old accounts, disable anything tied to addresses my family could guess, and rewrote security alerts straight to me. When the last progress bar hit 100%, Miles leaned back, took a sip of his Red Bull and said, "They messed with the wrong nerd." I laughed, and it felt like victory. 3 hours later, the fallout began. I got 6 notifications in a row. Failed login attempts on my email, my cloud drive, my old school portal, even my LinkedIn of all things. Every attempt came from the same IP address, my family's house. Derek had definitely tried to dig deeper, probably assuming I was too stupid to lock down my own information. What he didn't know was that cybersecurity wasn't just a hobby anymore. It was literally my job. And now their every attempt to break in was getting flagged by systems far more powerful than anything I could have set up on my own. By evening, my HR manager pulled me aside. "Hey Harper, we detected unauthorized login attempts on your work profile. Our security team blocked the IP, but do you want us to file a report?" I remember blinking at her slowly and thinking, damn. So this is what support feels like. I told her yes. Not because I wanted my family punished, but because I wanted a record. Paper proof that they'd crossed from annoying and irresponsible into dangerous and invasive. Meanwhile, back at the house I'd escaped from, things were unraveling fast. I know this because Jenna decided to do what all chaotic people do when life gets rough: go live on Facebook. The video popped up on my feed because apparently half my hometown was sharing it. She was crying into her front camera, mascara streaks running down her cheeks, saying things like, "Please pray for our family. Harper abandoned us. We have nothing. She left us in financial ruin." She even held up one of the twins as a prop, which was low even for her. And of course the comments started rolling in. "Wow, so heartless. Family is everything. How could she?" But then something unexpected happened. People who actually knew me, old coworkers, friends from high school, even a couple of neighbors, showed up in the comments with screenshots, receipts, stories. "Didn't Harper pay your electricity bill for 2 years? Girl, didn't you call her free childcare last Thanksgiving? Funny how you forgot the part where she covered your car insurance." The entire tone flipped. Within an hour, Jenna deleted the post, but the damage was done, and not to me. Then came the biggest shock. I got a letter from the DMV saying I owed hundreds in unpaid parking tickets for a car I didn't even own anymore. Turns out Derek never transferred the title after I gave it to him when mine died. He'd been driving it around town like it was his, racking up tickets, ignoring every notice. I drove straight to the DMV the next morning, armed with the signed transfer form and a look in my eye that said, "Try me." 20 minutes later, the car was legally off my name. 2 hours after that, it was towed from their driveway. Derek texted me in all caps, "Where is my car?" I replied with 5 words, "You mean my old car?" And that was it. He lost it. He showed up at my apartment, pounding on the door so hard the hallway echoed. I didn't open it. I called the cops. When they arrived, I handed over the video of him breaking into my room, the screenshots of his threats, and the report from my job. One of the officers looked at me and said, "Do you want to press charges?" For a second, I imagined saying yes. I imagined Derek in cuffs. I imagined the silence that would follow. But I shook my head. "Not yet," I said. "Just document it." Later that night, Mom left a voicemail on a new number, her voice trembling with rage. "I cannot believe you called the police on your own brother. What kind of daughter are you?" I deleted it without listening to the rest. And then, because the universe apparently likes drama, my manager emailed me with the subject line, "Congratulations on your promotion." I stared at the screen for a full minute. My chest felt like it might burst. I had walked away from that house with nothing but a duffel bag, and now I had a home, a job, people who respected me, and proof, undeniable proof, that I had been the backbone of a family that never deserved me. My family thought opening that box would give them leverage, a weapon to use against me. What they didn't know was that they didn't open a box. They opened a war, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one who was scared. The week after Derek tried to break into my accounts felt strangely quiet, like the world had gone on mute. I remember waking up one morning, sunlight spilling across my tiny studio apartment, and for a second, I actually thought something was wrong. Not because anything bad had happened, but because nothing had. No pounding on my door, no buzzing family group chat, no guilt-laced voicemails, just silence, the kind you only get in a place that actually belongs to you. It took me a minute to realize my shoulders were loose, not hunched up to my ears like they always were back home. You never notice how heavy a backpack is until you take it off. But while my life was settling like fresh snow, theirs was melting into slush. Word travels fast in small American towns, especially ours, where every barista, gym trainer, and grocery store clerk knew everyone's drama better than their own taxes. I started hearing things without even trying. A coworker mentioned she saw my mom at the credit union, arguing loudly about an overdraft. Someone else told me Jenna was fired from the kids' boutique after a customer recorded her screaming at them. And Derek? Apparently, he'd been showing up at bars ranting about ungrateful family members, which is hilarious because he conveniently forgot who'd been paying for his gas and groceries for years. I didn't celebrate, not out loud. But there was a quiet sense of karmic symmetry settling into place, kind of like watching a crooked painting slowly straighten itself. Meanwhile, I was learning how to live like a real adult, not the kind my family pretended to be, but someone who actually knew how to budget, pay bills, cook meals that weren't microwave disasters, and show up to work on time without blaming the universe for everything. My coworkers started noticing too. I'd bring donuts on Fridays. I laughed more. I even joined the company bowling team despite being absolutely terrible at bowling. It shocked me how quickly people accepted me. No strings attached, no hidden debts, no "you owe us," just mutual respect. It felt weird at first, like wearing a new pair of shoes you haven't broken in yet. But then came the letters. They started showing up in bunches, shoved under my door, stuffed into my mailbox, and once even taped to my car like some kind of emotional ransom note. The first one was written on my mom's floral stationery, the same kind she used for birthday cards when she wanted to seem motherly. The handwriting looked shaky. "Harper, we're going through a rough time. The kids miss you. We miss you." I didn't open it all the way, just skimmed the first lines, then dropped it straight into the trash chute. The next ones were from Jenna, dramatic, messy, full of guilt trips. "I know we've had our differences, but be reasonable. The twins need stability. You abandoning us made things worse." I tossed every single one. Then, surprisingly, came one from my mom that almost made me pause. It wasn't guilt-driven. It wasn't angry. It was short. 3 lines. "I don't recognize my life anymore. I didn't realize how much you did. I'm sorry." And here's the embarrassing part. For about 10 seconds, I felt my throat tighten. Because that was all I ever wanted growing up. Just one sentence where she acknowledged I wasn't invisible. One moment where she treated me like a person instead of a utility. But the thing is, even apologies can be weapons, especially when they only show up after everything collapses. I folded the letter quietly, set it on the counter, and thought, if this came 6 years ago, maybe things would be different. Instead, I put it in a drawer, not because I forgave her, but because I didn't want it contaminating my trash. Around that time, I started noticing something else. My boyfriend, Mason, wasn't just being supportive. He was being solid. Not the way people support you when they expect something back, but genuinely. He'd show up at my place with takeout because he drove by and thought of me, even though he lived 20 minutes away. He helped me build an IKEA shelf and didn't make fun of me when I installed one piece backward. One night, we sat on my balcony eating cheap ice cream out of the tub, and he said, "You know, you're allowed to be happy without apologizing for it." I swear my heart almost cracked. I had never been with someone who didn't treat my existence like an inconvenience. But the more my world expanded, the more theirs shrank. One afternoon, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was someone from the church my family occasionally attended. "I don't mean to get involved," the woman said gently, "but your mother asked our prayer group to, well, reach out on her behalf." I almost laughed. "Ma'am," I said, "she's not praying for healing. She's praying for a maid." The woman went quiet, then said softly, "Just take care of yourself, dear." And that was the first time I realized people outside my family saw it too. The imbalance, the manipulation, the way I'd been conditioned to carry weight that wasn't mine. Meanwhile, Derek kept spiraling. He tried calling me 12 times in one day, leaving voicemails that swung wildly between rage and desperation. "You owe us. You ruined everything. We need you." And then the one that sealed his fate. "If you cared about this family at all, you'd come fix what you broke." I remember listening to that one and feeling nothing. Not anger, not sadness, just clarity. They didn't miss me. They missed the service I provided. And there's a huge difference. The real turning point came when I visited the grocery store near my old neighborhood. I ran into Ms. Rowley, the sweet elderly woman who used to slip me muffins through the fence when I was a kid. She grabbed my hand and said, "I heard what happened, honey. Don't you dare go back there." When I asked her why she was so sure, she sighed and said, "Because I watched you grow up doing the work of 4 adults, and none of them had the decency to say thank you." That hit me harder than anything my family had done. Strangers saw me clearer than people who lived under the same roof for 20 years. My family's situation got worse as the weeks passed. Shut-off notices piled up. The fridge broke again. Derek's license got suspended because of unpaid tickets he'd ignored. Jenna's unemployment got denied because she'd been fired for cause. And my mom? She started leaning on church donations to get by. I didn't rejoice, but I didn't save them either. And that's when the guilt finally disappeared. Because it wasn't my job to stitch together a life they kept tearing apart. One night, after work, I sat on my balcony wrapped in a fleece blanket, watching the sun sink behind the buildings. Mason came over with 2 lemonades and a grin, saying he'd just gotten a raise. We clinked our plastic cups like kids at summer camp. I looked around at everything I had built, my place, my job, my peace, and I finally understood something I had never let myself believe. Their downfall wasn't my responsibility. Their pain wasn't my punishment. Their chaos wasn't my destiny. I had stepped out of the storm, and instead of lightning striking me for leaving, the sky cleared. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just surviving. I was living. And the strangest part? I didn't miss them. Not even a little. It's strange how a life can change without fireworks, without some dramatic movie-like moment. Sometimes the shift is quieter, like waking up one morning and realizing the weight you've carried your whole life just isn't there anymore. That's how it felt for me. One day, I opened my eyes in my little apartment, sunlight dripping through the blinds, and instead of bracing for a crisis or checking my phone for a list of demands, I just breathed. A normal inhale, a normal exhale. Something so simple, but for me, it felt revolutionary. I sat up slowly, hair a mess, blanket tangled around my legs, and whispered to myself, "You made it out." And it wasn't dramatic or triumphant. It was gentle, like telling a scared child she doesn't have to run anymore. Since leaving that house, I've built routines that sound so boring on paper, but feel like quiet acts of rebellion. I drink coffee on my balcony without anyone asking where the Tylenol is. I meal prep because I want to, not because someone forgot they had kids. I decorate my apartment with thrift store finds, fairy lights, and little reminders that this place, this life, is mine. And the best part? No one's voice echoes down the hallway demanding I fix something. No one tells me I owe them. No one drains me until I'm hollow. But healing isn't a straight line. Some days I'd catch myself reaching for my phone, ready to apologize for something I didn't even do. Trauma's funny like that. It lingers in your muscles. But I started recognizing the signs, catching myself mid-thought, telling my brain gently, "We don't live there anymore." And slowly, the guilt faded. Not disappeared completely, but softened like scars that no longer ache when it rains. My job became a huge part of that healing. My team wasn't perfect. Every office has its own flavor of weird. But they treated me with a kind of respect I'd never experienced before. Real respect. The kind that doesn't come with strings attached. When my promotion became official, my manager left a sticky note on my desk that said, "You earned this. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." I kept that note. It's still tucked inside my laptop case like a little promise to myself. And then there was Mason. Look, I'm not naive. I know relationships can shift, people change, even the sweetest guy can have secrets, especially with an ex like Brooklyn lurking around like a stray cat that refuses to realize she's not wanted anymore. But there was something different about the way he loved me. He never rushed me, never tried to fix me. One night, while we were sitting in his truck eating drive-through burgers, he looked over and said, "I don't want to be another weight you carry. I want to walk beside you, not on your back." I remember staring at him, half-chewed fry in my mouth, thinking, is this what healthy feels like? Because I had never known. But as spring rolled in, so did the whispers from home. People at the grocery store saying, "I heard things got ugly." Someone at the post office telling me my mom had moved in with a cousin temporarily. A friend texting me screenshots of Jenna's pity posts about being abandoned by family. I didn't respond to any of it. Not because I didn't care, but because caring had cost me too much. Caring had been a full-time job I never applied for. And for once, I chose me. One Sunday afternoon, I drove past my old neighborhood on the way to pick up a bookshelf from someone on Facebook Marketplace. I don't know why, I didn't plan it. But there I was, turning down that familiar street, every house looking smaller than I remembered. When I drove past my old home, I didn't stop. I didn't slow down. But I did look. The yard was overgrown. The porch light was broken. The windows were dark. It didn't look like the place I grew up. It looked like a shell. And for the first time, I realized something that hit deep. I hadn't lost anything when I left. I escaped. After picking up the bookshelf and listening to the seller overshare about her divorce for 20 minutes, gotta love small-town America, I sat in my car and let myself feel everything I'd been avoiding. Not sadness, not nostalgia, relief, like my lungs were finally filling properly. And for a moment, I wondered if my family ever had a moment like this, where they questioned their actions or felt the weight of their choices. But then I remembered all the times they watched me drown and handed me a brick instead of a rope. And I let the thought go. A couple weeks later, something unexpected happened. I received a small padded envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single photo, me at 16, holding the twins when they were babies, smiling like I hadn't yet learned what being used felt like. There was a sticky note stuck to the back. In my mother's handwriting, "I hope you find the life you deserved." No manipulation, no guilt, no signature, just that. I sat on my couch for a long time, staring at that photo. And instead of crying or breaking down, I whispered, I'm already finding it. Then I place the photo in a drawer, not to cherish but to acknowledge, to say, this happened, it shaped me. But it's not my prison anymore. My life now isn't perfect. I still get overwhelmed, still flinch a little when someone raises their voice, still overthink texts, still struggle with the idea that peace doesn't need to be earned through suffering. But I'm learning. Every day, I'm learning. I'm building a future that doesn't require me to bleed to keep others warm. Some nights, Mason and I sit on my balcony with cheap wine, watching the city lights flicker like quiet applause. And he'll say, half joking, "You know, for someone who survived a whole family apocalypse, you turned out pretty amazing." And I'll roll my eyes, shove his shoulder lightly, and say something like, "Yeah, well, trauma builds character," or whatever. But here's the truth I'm finally ready to admit. I'm proud of myself, not for enduring, but for leaving, for choosing myself in a world that taught me I wasn't allowed to, for breaking a cycle that could have swallowed me whole, for building a life where I wake up and the first thing I feel isn't dread, it's hope. And if there's one lesson I'd pass on to anyone who feels trapped, unseen, or taken for granted, it's this. Sometimes the bravest thing you'll ever do is walk away before they break you. Sometimes the victory isn't in the revenge, it's in the rebuilding. And sometimes, the happiest ending is simply a life you chose for yourself. My family's world collapsed without me. Looking back, I think the real lesson wasn't about cutting ties or proving anyone wrong. It was about finally understanding that peace isn't something you earn by shrinking yourself or bending until you break. Peace is something you choose. And for years, I let myself believe that loyalty meant silence, that love meant enduring whatever was thrown at me, that family was an obligation rather than a relationship. But life has a way of teaching you the same lesson over and over until you finally listen. And what I learned is simple. You can't pour from an empty cup, and you can't save people who refuse to stop sinking. Mine finally began. Walking away didn't make me cruel. Setting boundaries didn't make me ungrateful. It made me human. It made me whole. And in a world where so many of us were raised to be the bigger person, sometimes the bravest thing we can do is refuse to be stepped on. My grandma used to say, "A hit dog will holler," and she was right. When you stop enabling certain behaviors, people show their true colors fast. And yes, weeks later, they finally reached out with something that sounded like an apology. I forgave them. But this time, on my terms. If this story hit close to home, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever had to walk away from a toxic cycle or reclaim your worth after years of being overlooked? Share your story in the comments. Someone out there might need to hear it. And if you found a bit of strength or clarity in my journey, hit the like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next story filled with grit, justice, and reflection. Wishing you peace, the kind that comes after choosing yourself, even when the world told you not to.